Humans have a love-hate relationship with change. We need it for growth and variety, and yet we hate the upheaval it brings into our lives. Resilience seems to be the answer. So let's explore a new kind of conversation where we look at the turbulence of change and the resilience that enables us to not only survive it, but to truly thrive from it. I'm Paula Shaw, life transition expert, grief counseling specialist, and author. I'll be spotlighting influential people on this podcast, people who have taken the steps to change it up. So join us as we share valuable information to help you navigate the rocky waters of change. Come on, jump on in. Hi, I'm Paula Shaw, your host. I am delighted to have you here with me today because we're going to have another extraordinary show working again with the theme, A Season of Grief. Those of you who have been following the show know that we have been looking at grief. First, we actually did a kind of masterclass on grief. And so we could understand what it was, how it shows itself, what it does to people, and what we can do to help those who are dealing with grief. We've spoken with Gary Plummer, a former NFL player who dealt with the grief of concussion damage. We talked with Jenna Mendez about the grief of foster youth. And last week, we spoke with Jeff Ginsberger about dealing with the grief of Navy SEALs and NFL players who are trying to find themselves in life after those particular careers. Today, we're going to be looking at another kind of grief, the grief that evolves from trauma and abuse. Those are really, really difficult and very present kinds of experiences for too many people in our population. Trauma and abuse can almost cause a different kind of grief. It may show up as fear, as lack of trust, as anxiety, as an inability to feel calm and present. It can show up in many different ways. As I mentioned to you in our very first show, grief has many faces. It's not just tears and sadness. Sometimes it is that, of course. Sometimes it's depression, but sometimes it's almost jitteriness. It's almost an inability to focus. So what do we do? What do we do when we know someone, or when we hear about someone, or we just know there are a lot of someones out there who are dealing with abuse and trauma? Well, the woman that I will be introducing you to today, Tracy Pryor, is someone who's really taking an active step to help those who have dealt with the grief of trauma and abuse. So let me tell you just a little bit about her before we bring her out. She has had a 26-year career as a public prosecutor. She now serves as the chief district. Oh boy, I'm blowing that. Let me start again. That's a big title. She serves as the chief deputy district attorney. I'm going to get that right before we're done, Tracy. She is the chief deputy district attorney of San Diego County. And she has the huge job of being the chief operating officer of a facility called One Safe Place. And I'm telling you, One Safe Place is an amazing, amazing facility. It's 44,000 square feet. It is a huge operation. And that's what I'm really wanting Tracy to share with you today, because it would be my dream if every city in America had a facility like this. And I want to talk to Tracy and have her tell you exactly what it's about, who it serves, and hopefully many, many other people will hear about this. And if their city doesn't have a facility like One Safe Place, boy, get out there and start marching and let's get one, because every town, every city needs a place like this. So without any further ado, let me bring on the lady who really knows all about One Safe Place. Tracy, please join me. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Paula. Thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure, and I apologize for absolutely butchering your title. Oh my God.
No, that doesn't matter to me. It's funny, at One Safe Place where we work, we have a sign on the door that says, "At One Safe Place, we leave our egos at the door." So titles mean nothing to any of us that work in this field. We're just wanting to help these families. So
I
not to
love that. I love that. So, first of all, tell us a little bit about you, Tracy. What's the backstory on Tracy Pryor?
Oh, well, thank you. I'm a native San Diegan.
Wow, that's rare.
I grew up, way to college and law school, and my parents said, being in San Diego, you're not going to sit around and go to the beach all day. You've got to go and get a job for 20 hours a week and volunteer for 20 hours a week. And so in that 20-hour a week volunteer situation, I volunteered in a restraining order clinic, and I started to meet victims and survivors of abuse and trauma. And I was caught by them and taken by the resiliency, to use that word that was in your opening promo. I mean, the bravery, the courage, the fear, the anxiety, the not knowing how to get to that next step. And I was called to help them. And so part of my journey was to go to law school and become a prosecutor who stands alongside victims and survivors of abuse and trauma, to try to help them realize that there is hope.
Mm, wow. So, this is more than a career for you. It's kind of a mission, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting. I do think I'm called to the work. I think that all the people who do this kind of work, my fearless leader, I'm one of Summer Stephan's chief deputies, and I
That's
have great role models. Yeah, she's a 30-year public prosecutor too, and sometimes people think as prosecutors and it's just the courtroom stuff, which is, very important. And that's where you hold people to account, and, you need to be fair and equal with your justice. But then there's this whole other part of it where you just meet these victims and you meet survivors where they're at, and hopefully give them, the courage to keep moving forward and get to the other side to finally thrive.
So, tell us a little bit about who are the victims that are served by One Safe Place.
Sure. One Safe Place is a one-stop shop for victims and survivors of abuse and trauma throughout really anywhere. North County is where the center is located. But we've had victims walk in our doors just this week. One was escaping abuse from Stockton. One came from Michigan. One came from Texas. One came from the East Coast. And what happens is it is a refuge. We want it to be a place of hope, healing, and justice. And so victims walk in our doors and they're greeted with a case care coordinator who will go over their risks and needs. What is it that brought you into our space today, and how can we help you get to the other side? So we'll serve anybody that has a connection to trauma, and most typically that is domestic violence, elder abuse, sexual assault, child abuse, human trafficking, labor trafficking, and crimes against children. It is typically, but we also serve kids. We've served plenty of folks who've been bullied. We've served, folks who've had kind of what we call derivative victimization. Their families have been caught up in the crossfire of abuse, or they're victims and survivors of violent loss.
So, do people from your staff go out into schools or to groups and talk about One Safe Place or talk about abuse or trauma?
We do. Part of the goal and the value is really to get the word out. And so
Mhm.
just this last week, I had the honor of speaking actually at Canyon Crest Academy High School. They have a social justice class. And I was just inspired by these kids, grades 9 through 12, to be able to talk about a good criminal justice, responsible solution to things like homelessness, abuse. We want to tell youth and anybody who will listen, that one person's adverse childhood experience does not have to be their destiny. If they are caught in the crossfire of abuse at home, or if they experience abuse as an adult, that doesn't have to define them. It's part of who they are, but there is help out there.
Oh, that is just beautiful. I really love that because I think so often people feel that once they're damaged goods, so to speak, that it's all over, that their life is doomed, so to speak. And so to hear that you're trying to turn that around, even on the level of the students, so that they turn into the citizens eventually who understand and believe that's huge.
Well, and just flipping the narrative, the idea of somebody feeling that they're damaged goods. That's what trauma therapy is for, is to get in there and flip that narrative to be absolutely focused on the person who did the abuse, not that you are damaged goods.
Mm.
And so a lot of it's about the word choices. We call the individuals who walk in our doors guests and members. We want them to feel that they are a guest in our home or a member of something larger than themselves. Many people have been abused and traumatized, have been beaten down their whole lives. They've never thought that they could belong to something. And of course, they have felt like the choices were all taken away. So I think it's important, even in just how we speak with one another, come with language of respect and empowerment, and not, making them feel like their abuser has made them feel.
You surprised me when you mentioned to us that you took in people that were not from San Diego County. I think that's amazing. So this is truly like a sanctuary for people who have dealt with abuse and who are going through some probably awful trauma in their lives. So that might be a good place for us to talk about, how are the services you provide paid for?
Sure, great question. The Family Justice Center model is actually started 20 years ago. One of our pioneers in San Diego, Casey Gwynn, started the model, and there is the very first Family Justice Center in the world in downtown San Diego. And that model was replicated across the world. There are now 190 of these in 15 different countries. And the concept is that there's no payment. These services are free of charge, no cost to the victims and survivors. And so the way that they are funded is a combination of things. Ours in One Safe Place is funded by what we call Prop 172 funding, which is public safety monies that get to come to counties. Other family justice centers have a combination of public-private partnerships or grant-funded or nonprofit, foundationally funded. And so we are grateful to have 87 different partners at One Safe Place.
Wow.
In a couple weeks, that number is going to go to 90 because 3 more partners are kind of in the pipeline that we're working on here. But the fact that there's 87 different nonprofits in that North County region leaning in to help means that we can get to yes and offer these at no cost to our guests and members.
And did you say, Tracy, that this is a kind of a model that's being replicated across the country and around the world? Is that what you said?
It is. It's a model that's been deemed to
great.
be, yes, best practices. There are family justice centers in 28 of our 58 counties in California. So we have 58 counties. All 58 need one. And what we found in San Diego, my fearless leader, Summer Steffen, realized we don't just need one in San Diego. We need about 4. And that model was in New York. They have one in every borough. So they have 5 of them in New York.
Wow.
And, because San Diego County is 4,500 square miles, that's why our district attorney said, hey, driving to downtown San Diego from the North County is like going to a different country. So we need to regionalize these so all victims can have access.
Oh, that is so fabulous. We're going to have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to know so much more about what kinds of services you provide at One Safe Place. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Is living in today's fast-paced world making you feel stressed and out of balance? Are anxiety, sleeplessness, depression, lack of focus, or weight gain robbing you of your relationship and your energy? If you're ready for change, you need to call Paula Shaw. Paula helps you identify and eliminate self-sabotaging thinking and behavior. Using a wide variety of mind-body techniques, she provides her clients with the most effective processes for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and with me today is the Chief Deputy District Attorney, Tracy Pryor. If you missed the beginning of the show, I did a terrible job of actually stating her title, but Tracy said, which was so wonderful, that at One Safe Place, which is the incredible facility we've been talking about, their sign says, "Leave your ego at the door." So I love that. I think we should have that sign by every door in America. So welcome back, Tracy. I'd love to talk a little bit more about these different populations you serve, the kinds of abuse. One group that really, really tugs at my heartstrings and that I really have a passion for helping are those people who have been sex trafficked. And I know that at One Safe Place, we often think of these as women, and I know the majority probably are, but there are actually men who are being sex trafficked as well, right?
Absolutely. And boys. That's one of the awareness topics that in January, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, many of the nonprofit organizations and also at One Safe Place really tried to get that information out, that, this is happening right now to men and boys. And, for some reason, our society, it's more comfortable to talk about women as victims, but we can't think that way. All genders, all gender equality, genders and gender identities are trafficked and abused, and so we have to think of this way more globally, way more inclusively. But sex trafficking is a real issue, especially where we live in San Diego. The numbers are astronomical, and we have to keep getting the word out. Through awareness, I think in middle school, high schools, even elementary schools can do small, age appropriate kinds of lessons, such as healthy relationships and talking about relationships being freeing and being comfortable and not being uncomfortable. And we need to start getting the word out early to kids about what healthy looks like.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process, the sort of stages that happen to young girls? Because I was pretty shocked when I found out about the grooming process, about these stalkers, how they're reaching out to kids. Can you educate us a little bit about that, Tracy?
Sure. And the perpetrators are very good at what they do. They know that they can prey upon the vulnerable. And a lot of times vulnerable is young, and children who just haven't had as much life experience. Often, unfortunately, in child sexual assault or in other victimization types, the perpetrator is known to the victim as opposed to being a stranger. That is a myth and misconception that sometimes exists out in society, that these child molesters are the scary person in the ski mask lurking around a childhood park. That's not the case. Over 90% of the cases that come into our office and what we see, the perpetrators are known to the victims. So that's where this grooming can kind of take place. And unfortunately, it can happen within families. It can happen very easily within the confines of one's own home. And so that's something that people, I think, don't recognize. And so when people are quick to blame a victim, well, why didn't she tell? Why didn't he come forward?
Yes.
What we have to think about is the reasoning behind that. There's fear and embarrassment and shame. Add on to that the fact that this is a family member. What's going to happen if I report my family member, a stepdad or an uncle or a stepmother, and so kids and adult victims really wrestle with the secondary consequences, if you will, of reporting abuse. And so that's why these crimes are so underreported.
And the whole aspect of this where perpetrators are reaching out to kids through social media. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was really shocking to me to find out as well.
Yes. It's one of the most pervasive ways to victimize right now. And it got worse during the pandemic because kids were on the devices way more. And people who are sometimes our eyes and ears of abuse, like teachers and mandated reporters, weren't being able to see some of the kids that were experiencing signs of abuse. So perpetrators are very good at this. And, the kids are on social media all the time. Well, a lot of people, we all are on social media all the time as a population. And so why not use that as the playground for the abuse? I'm hearing a little bit of a noise, so I
know I am too. I'm not sure. Oh,
just went down, so that's
Oh,
good.
good. Thank you. I was hearing it too.
So we try to tell parents when we meet with them, that's just something to have conversations with your kids about. If
Yeah.
something doesn't feel right, obviously, tell a trusted adult. Sextortion is a big topic that's going on right now, where they use artificial intelligence, to go in there and find friends of the kids, and then they
Oh,
can send them
no.
links. They can send links saying, you better send me a picture of yourself, or else I will send this, bad picture of you to all of your contacts. Wire me $2,500 immediately, or I will X. So, it's very overwhelming for these kids. And, it's something that we have to keep our head on a swivel on. We have to be vigilant about our public safety and our kids' safety.
That is absolutely horrifying that that kind of thing is going on, because imagine being 15 and
Mhm.
all you care about is what your peers think of you. And if somebody threatens you like that, oh my goodness, you would just do anything to keep that from happening.
Right.
Oh, I'm just horrified. I got to tell you, Tracy, I'm really horrified by that. And I think it's so important that we're talking about this, and that your division also works on getting the word out to schools. In fact, I think isn't there some sort of a group of young people that go and they do assemblies, and they actually have some kind of a performance they do, educating kids about this? Is that
Yes.
part of
Um,
your division?
Yes, my boss, Summer Steffen, our district attorney, about 3 years ago now, paired up a public-private partnership with a company called UBS, and there is a curriculum for 3 different grade levels that goes out into schools and teaches about human trafficking and bystander intervention. And it's just a fabulous curriculum that talks to kids about red flags and warning signs. A young girl who all of a sudden withdraws from school activities that she used to do, or a young boy who now has, this special friend that's older, that's all of a sudden bought him a cell phone and, got him all these new clothes. There's just some tattooing the name of a perpetrator is very common for perpetrators to want to do. And, there's just things that kids can do if they feel like their friend is being abused, is to say something. And so the education in the schools is very important. Tomorrow, actually Friday, tonight, actually at One Safe Place, there's going to be a screening of a movie called Unstranger Danger, and the community's involved, and we're inviting youth to come as well. And that title, Unstranger Danger, says it all. And that is trying to get the word out that often the abusers are known to the victims in the case. And so this film traces the stories of 5 local victims and their experiences in reporting the abuse and going through the criminal justice process. Another example is that on Wednesday next week at One Safe Place, we're having a teen dating violence awareness event where 100 kids are going to be coming in, and they'll have pizza first, but then they'll do some interactive games to learn about healthy relationships. And they'll go through an interactive little experience of a game called In Their Shoes. And they'll go through different stations and read little cards about, what would happen if this happened to you. And then they go through different stations and discuss among themselves what are some ways to get out of an abusive relationship, and learn tools on how to do that. So we have to start young, because kids that are experiencing violence or that grow up in violent homes, they might go to repeat behaviors because that's what they think is normal. So getting in there and spreading awareness about what's healthy and what's not, I think is important.
Oh, it's huge. And I love these programs that you're doing. So you have obviously people on your staff who are therapists, psychologists. I think that's an important piece we should talk about. Tell our listeners what is available at One Safe Place, because
Sure.
you've got lots of professional people there to help these victims.
Sure. We call it a village, a collaborative response model. And so when the victim or survivor walks in our doors, our guest or our member, first we just, ask what kind of brought them to the center, and then the village can amass. So the kinds of services that are inside One Safe Place are everything from, for instance, legal services. Many of the guests and members are seeking a restraining order. So we have a full legal services team, lawyers on site that can help somebody get a restraining order and fill out the paperwork. work. And the victim can stay in the comfort of one safe place and not have to even go to the courthouse, because we have a remote courtroom on site where they can, like we're doing today, beam in or zoom in to a proceeding, an actual court proceeding, with a therapy dog at their side and a comfort support person, standing in empowerment with them. So that's one service, legal services. Others is therapy. One of the key aspects is to try to get our victims and survivors into therapy as soon as we can. Therapy is trauma therapy, and it's really based on cognitive behavioral therapy and some other type of modalities that really try to reduce post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, PTSD, and also help kids recognize the red flags and warning signs, and that they're okay. That it's okay to be not okay too, and to just kind of go through these processes with a trained therapist, so that they can find that, their, we call it their ACE score is not their destiny. An ACE score is something that's an adverse childhood experience that's happened to them. And the statistics show that most of the kids who walk in our doors are going to have an ACE score of about 6 to 10. That means they've had 6 to 10 adverse childhood experiences in their background that make them, unfortunately, statistically, they'll have poor health outcomes if we don't get in there and really respond with care and comfort and therapy.
Oh, I'm so delighted to hear that you have that available. And I want you to talk more about the other services that are there when we come back from this very quick message. We'll be right back. Paula Shaw here. I'm thrilled that LifeWave phototherapy patches, which use no drugs or chemicals, have become a part of my life and my business. My family and I all use their wearable patch technology, and the results are life-changing. My parents in their 90s used the X39 patch, which activates stem cells, reverses aging, and improves the function of every area of the brain. I love X39 because I can work out with the 30-year-olds with no problem. And it's erased my fine lines and given my skin a youthful glow. LifeWave patches use a patented form of phototherapy, frequencies of light, to safely boost health and wellness at the cellular level. No drugs. To learn more, go to my website, lifewave.com/safe health. That's lifewave.com/safe health. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and with me today is Chief Deputy District Attorney Tracy Pryor, and we are talking about one extraordinary place that is known as One Safe Place. It is a county facility that serves people who have been through trauma and abuse and human trafficking, elder abuse, and domestic violence. So Tracy has been telling us about what services are actually available there. There is medical, legal, they even have a courtroom on site that they can zoom into the courtroom without having to go into an actual courtroom. And there's so many other things as well, Tracy. One of my favorite things when I toured this facility, which I have to tell you is not only incredible in what it offers, it's beautiful. It's so well designed, Tracy. It's so appealing to walk into the center. Is there a story behind that? Was it designed originally? I mean, there are beautiful images on the walls. The children's area is incredible. What's the story behind that?
Thanks for that feedback, Paula. And yes, there is. The intention of the center was very thoughtfully designed. We had focus groups actually with survivors of abuse, and we also went to research. There's quite a bit of nice research in hospital settings that talks about if the context and the environment of the center or the hospital or the facility is positive, direct patient outcomes can be improved. And we know this with victims and survivors of abuse. There's also some research that discusses nature and the fact that healing can improve with lessons of nature. And so in our center, all the design elements were thought thought about ahead of time greatly. From the natural plants, we have 642 live plants in the center, to the actual real wood. There's real timber in the center. We pump in what we call ambient noise or white noise in the background, just for a calming effect. And the graphics on the wall are all lessons of nature. We want to bring lessons of healing from the outside into the inside. So for instance, one of the graphics on the wall is a big picture of bamboo, and bamboo is a very resilient plant, a resilient grass. And so the therapist can kind of use those and incorporate them into the modalities of therapy, and talk about resiliency and talk about hope. So yes, the center was designed with victims and survivors in mind. We want them to feel immediately comfortable. Our welcome hub is designed to be like a living room. We give them choice, tell them, here's the refrigerator, here's the coffee maker, we'll make you some coffee, but this is your living room. Help yourself. And we want to give them choice. So yes, thank you about that. And the services, there are many more than just the legal and the medical. We have job readiness services, for instance. Some of our partners came in over the last few months and offered a 6-week course on how to build a resume, how to look for a job, and how to ace the interview. And so it started out with 7 survivors who had gone through services at One Safe Place. And just 2 weeks ago, we found out that one woman got a job with a range of $18 to $24 an hour. And she's now able to, get on her feet and provide for her family. So, we really want to bring the victim from that stage of being a victim to being a survivor to being a thriver. And so those job readiness services also complement some of the other services. We have nutrition classes, cooking demonstrations to teach families who might be food insecure, how to have healthy, sustainable eating, how to make $10 go a long way, how to provide healthy meals for your family throughout the week. Other services are homelessness related. Housing and restraining orders are our top 2 requests. Yes. And so we have a robust housing navigation team who helps survivors figure out what's going to happen tonight, what's going to happen in the next 6 days. And food. We provide our guests and members with about 6 days of food as they leave our care, because many of them go on to shelters or transitional housing before they can kind of land on their feet. And then one of the last services I'll talk about here is haircuts. We have a Dress to Thrive clothing boutique where families can come in and get some new clothes to either take on a new independence in their lives or get ready for that job interview, that court hearing, or just because they need some. And when they walk into the boutique, as you've seen, Paula, because you've been there, the goal is to make them feel dignified, make them feel worthy, give them a new pair of clothes, new pair of jeans. And then there's a little hair salon in there too, to lift them up and make them feel like $1 million.
It's an incredible facility. And you know what I love about the clothes? The way they're all set up, it's like a real department store. You don't get a feeling that this is a bunch of donated secondhand stuff. There's not too much. It's beautifully displayed. I feel like everything that happens from the minute you walk through the door of One Safe Place is about creating dignity. It's about creating a sense of worth, because I know that with the people I've dealt with in my own private practice who have experienced trauma and abuse, the sense of no value that they walk in with, that this feeling that they don't matter, that no one cares, that they're even being alive doesn't really matter to anybody. You don't have that feeling from the second you walk through the doors at One Safe Place. Your staff are amazing. The facility is amazing. I think if the goal was, if somebody said, we want to create this safe place where people have all their needs met and they get a start on beginning to visualize life in a different way and visualize themselves in a different way, you've done it. You've really created that, Tracy. It's so beautiful.
Well, thank you. And we had an army of a team to help us do this. It's a collective vision. It's the power of we, really. And because we have these almost 90 community partners, plus just an amazing care team, we're able to get to yes for many of these victims. Our goal is that, a survivor should get to thrive and walk forward without their past defining their future. And, we want them to know that, there's pathways forward. And we talk like that with language. We like to call One Safe Place a center, not a facility. Or we like to use words like I mentioned, the guest and member. We talk about hope a lot. We have hope coaches and we have hope moments throughout the center. And I think just even language in speaking with our survivors makes them feel that they are cared for.
Now, are all the staff people there at One Safe Place, are they all professionals, or are some of the people volunteers? How does that work?
Sure. This army is made up of some are professionals, licensed therapists, licensed counselors, doctors, nurses, prosecutors, law enforcement detectives, and others are volunteers that, have spent careers in education. Or we had a young woman who heard about us and is like 19 years old and just wants to give back. We've got a whole army of volunteers who come from all different walks of life, some who have lived experience of being a survivor, and they just, like I say, check their ego at the door and just open up their hearts and their hands to help. And it's fabulous. Seeing I guess it's contagious. You walk around and people are just always wanting to help and really keep that laser focus on the family and on the survivor. And I think that's what is the magic behind One Safe Place.
And there truly is magic there. Tracy, I wanted to get back to something for a minute. You mentioned earlier how people are so confused. Why don't these beings, whether they're male or female, who are being sex trafficked, why don't they get out? And I kind of wondered the same thing with domestic violence. What are the methods or the mechanisms that hold them in place in this life that's making them so miserable?
Sure. Domestic violence is at its core a crime about power and control. And so the perpetrator is solely focused on power and controlling, dominating the victim, who over time, this is a person that maybe, they loved each other and there is still love in the relationship. But over time, the victim sometimes can learn to become learned helplessness, they call it in the literature. And it's a dynamic that can happen to anyone. This is not a X kind of person's problem or a Y kind of person's problem or a poor person's problem or a rich person's problem. It's everyone's problem. And there are domestic violence victims that are at your workplace right now. There are domestic violence victims in your family. There are domestic violence victims all over. And it's a crime that does not discriminate, and it crosses all socioeconomical worlds. And it really focuses on this power and control within an intimate partner relationship. And so victims are embarrassed, they're shamed. They feel uncomfortable even asking for help because then people might judge them. And, there's secrecy involved. Often the perpetrators are isolating the victims from the rest of their family, or they don't want the victims to even have an independence in their lives. We see so many cases as a result of the victim getting a new job and feeling powerful, or just talking to another person, in a relationship. It's jealousy. So we call it the spokes of the domestic violence wheel. And there's a cycle of it, a cycle of domestic violence. It starts out with kind of what they call this acute battering stage. So maybe an incident happens, like a slap or a shove or something, but then it's a honeymoon phase. There are different languages in the literature, but that's the time when the perpetrator will say, I love you, come back to the relationship. And, the victim is remembering the good times and gets back in the relationship. And then it's called the kind of walking on eggshells feel, where, it's just, wow, when's something going to happen? And it's a cycle that repeats itself over and over, and it often escalates over time. And so we have people that have walked into One Safe Place after 37 years of being abused.
Oh my God.
They test their toe in the water there and they see, am I really going to get help here? And we've had them come back 2 and 3 and 4 times. And then on the 5th time, they're like, I'm leaving now. And these are just stories that happen over and over again. And we want, the victims and survivors to know that whenever you're ready, people will be here to help you. And we recognize that it's more common to stay in the relationship than to be able to get out of it, because it's terrifying to get out of it.
And, one of the things that really comes through to me when I listen to you and what I know about One Safe Place, there's like no judgment. It's not like, oh, you're here again,
Right.
You still haven't left, because you get it. I can tell just listening the way you talk about it, Tracy, that, there's so many levels to what's going on psychologically with people. And then we haven't even touched on the fact that often children are involved. And you would think having children in a situation where there's domestic violence, that would make you want to run immediately for their safety. But so often a woman has no ability to leave. She doesn't have the financial ability, or maybe even a car and a place to go.
Right, right. You've hit it all of these aspects of the domination and the control, and it isn't even just a women's issue. This is every gender, every gender identity. If the perpetrator is about power and control, then that's when it can happen within an intimate partner relationship. And the kids caught in the crossfire is unfortunately just a very ugly truth about domestic violence, to use that phrase. It's kids don't, I think, escape from the abuse. They know what's going on. They put on their headphones and they try to compartmentalize. So they do try to escape, but they don't sleep through it. I mean, they don't just know it's not going on. And so, those kids, we don't want them to grow up to be that next generation of abusers, because sometimes they might repeat patterns that they see. And so that's when it's so important to get in and get some therapy to these kids caught in the crossfire of abuse. And when we do that, I think we give those kids a future and we help public safety. We like to say it's easier to build strong children than to fix broken adults. And so if we can get in early with these kids, and let them know that, this is not healthy. Daddies don't get to treat mommies like this, or mommies don't get to treat mommies like this, whatever the relationship dynamic is we want them to know that, that's not okay,
Oh, I love that. We're going to need to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the child abuse and elder abuse.
Sure.
So we'll be right back with Tracy Pryor.
For those looking to improve their lives, there's nobody better to turn to than Paula Shaw. Paula helps people regain successful lives by identifying and eliminating self-sabotaging behavior using a multitude of mind-body techniques to identify and resolve their core issues. Working with a wide variety of healing modalities, she provides her clients with the most effective process for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and with me today is Chief Deputy District Attorney Tracy Pryor, and we're talking about an incredible center that exists right here in North County, San Diego, called One Safe Place, that serves people who have been through trauma and abuse. And I mean people of all ages. We've talked about people who have been sex trafficked. We've talked about domestic violence. We've talked about other kinds of abuse. But right now, I'd like to talk to Tracy a little bit about the children who are in that situation of domestic abuse. Sometimes the children are actually being physically assaulted and abused, right, Tracy? Sometimes they're not. I know. Sometimes it's the parent. And an experience I've ever had in working with kids whose parent was being abused, whether it was through verbiage, whether it was through words or whether it was physical, the children feel the pain on a certain level, don't they?
They do. And, we have kids that walk in our doors. Just a couple weeks ago, kids were clinging to their mother and they wanted their mom to just be safe, and this protection aspect. The kids are just so resilient. But the reality is they're caught in that crossfire. So sometimes they might not be hit, but they are secondarily witnessing the abuse. And we call that a direct victim of child endangerment. We train police officers, when kids are witnessing the abuse and seeing the aftermath of the perpetrator onto their parent, we need to be thinking of them as victims themselves of child endangerment and child abuse. And so we do charge those as crimes, and we want to get the word out there that we don't tolerate that. Kids who are witnessing and experiencing this are victims themselves. The sad reality is that we see in the research a connection between domestic violence and child abuse, physical and also sexual. And so that's a whole nother layer and barrier for kids to want wanting to even say that something bad's going on in the house, because they're worried. They're worried that, if they tell, they're going to get hurt more. They're worried what's going to be happening to their mom if they tell. Kids who've been in the system know that, child welfare, they think that they might come and take their parents. I mean, these are kids that are young. We shouldn't put all the burden on them to have to navigate through these waters. And, that's why it's so important to, I think, hold people accountable when they do these kinds of crimes to families, because it rips apart generations of kids. But the hope and the good news is that there's a lot of resources out there for these kids. And when moms are brave enough to get out of the abuse, that's a great time for the kids to get therapy, to also recognize what's been happening to mom is unhealthy, and that we don't want to repeat these cycles. But it's also important for the kids, if they are so brave, to be able to tell if they're being abused, tell a trusted adult, because the system can come in and help. And it is so scary to tell that you're being abused sexually. Most times I pick juries for a lifetime, and we'd pick a jury in a child sexual assault case, and a juror would raise their hand and say, you know what, I haven't even told my wife of 60 years. But since you're asking me in a court of law, yes, I was a victim of abuse. And it's something that most people keep to their graves, quite frankly. They would rather not tell a soul forever than risk what they feel is the victimization stigma that exists out there for some, which is unfortunate.
And you know what? I know personally how huge that is, Tracy. And having experienced it in my own childhood and having gone years without ever telling even my parents. And I think for some of us, it's that we think there's something bad in us that made it happen, especially if it's a trusted family member or a friend, something like that. And when you're young, you don't understand. You don't realize that this person is sick or this person is a perpetrator. Because children naturally are egocentric thinkers. So we think, as children, everything that happens is because of us. So all the good stuff is because of us, but also so is the bad. And that can be a really difficult thing. And so I just say right now to any mother who is listening to this, who is dealing with domestic abuse and or child abuse, take yourself right now to one safe place, because you will be safe there, and you will be able to get help for your child as well as yourself. And
thank you for that, Paula. And I just want to thank you for sharing what you just shared. And that's you're a prime example of somebody who's overcome. And I want kids and everyone to realize that what happened to you is part of who you are, but it doesn't define you walking forward. And one safe place can be a haven for that. And it's when you're ready. It's not, like right now is going to be this moment when I'm going to walk in there and do it. Sometimes it takes time. And the nice thing for the community to know is that there's no pressure. When you walk in the door, none of the services are contingent upon you reporting to law enforcement. And so I want to get that message out there too, because while law enforcement is on site and they're an anchor partner and they're integral in our ability to provide hope, healing, and justice, some people that might be a barrier, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a time when you're ready to get out of the relationship.
It occurs to me that one of the most important things people need when they're trying to heal or when they have been abused is acceptance. Because the victim themselves feels they're not acceptable, or they feel they somehow are bad, or they've made this horrible mistake or taken this action, that they've taken. And what I really love that I hear from you, Tracy, and what I see at One Safe Place, to the point, it's just really makes me feel emotional. There's such a level of acceptance. There's no judgment. There's nobody shoulding on you, nobody telling you what you should have done or should be doing. They're just taking you in with love and with service and with these beautiful intentions of helping you to change your life. And I
Thank you for saying that. And this may be for the very first time in somebody's life, because batterers and abusers, they don't give choice. They don't give acceptance. They should you all the time, and so this is going to be a place where you can breathe. And, we like to say, or I believe that trauma looks backwards, but hope looks forwards. And so we want to be a place of hope when somebody's ready. We call the people who work at One Safe Place hope givers, and they kind of hold on to the hope and are ready to give it when the victim's ready to receive it. And it's just really all based on what's right for the victim. So thank you for pointing that out, because when one feels judged, they won't open up, and
Absolutely.
when one feels, so.
And one won't seek help if one fears being judged.
Exactly.
And so I think you've really done so much to alleviate that concern on the part of anybody who might be thinking of seeking help.
Right. One thing I wanted to mention too is pets. Many people don't seek help but because they have a pet at home and they're worried that the abuser is going to hurt the pet, or they worry, who's going to take my pet with me? A shelter won't take me if I have a pet. So I did want to just get the message out there that we are a very pet friendly center. We recognize the direct link between animal abuse and human abuse, and we want to reduce barriers about pets. So we have about 6 great pet partners amongst our, almost 90 partner agencies. For instance, one woman came in with a backpack and a cat carrier, and she said, I am ready to leave the abusive situation, but I will not leave my pet cat. And so the partners rallied, and the restraining order attorney was half allergic to cats, but he still met with her. And, within 45 minutes, the cat had been delivered cat food, a new cat carrier, and we were on our way to being able to foster that cat so that the victim could go into a shelter and then reunite with the cat. So that's just an example of, we've served 43 pets, including someone's pet snake, 3 pet rodents, dogs and cats. So don't let having pets be a barrier to walking in for help.
So one last population I'd like to touch on before we run out of time, and a population who I think would really, what you just explained about pets would be really important to them, and that's elders.
Oh, yes.
So elder abuse is a phenomenon that we never used to hear about. So let's talk a little bit about that, Tracy.
Sure. They say society is judged by how you treat your most vulnerable, your youngest and your oldest. And the elder abuse situation in our county is real. It's real everywhere. And the elder population is exponentially growing. And so we have to, remain vigilant and committed, as we are in this county, to recognizing red flags and warning signs of elder abuse and then responding to it. So at One Safe Place, we have 6 fabulous partners, everyone from adult protective services, adult aging and independent services, serving seniors, Alzheimer's San Diego, PACE for the elderly. The list goes on of people who are ready, willing, and able to help. Just yesterday, I'll be reporting that out in one of my newsletters tonight, but one of our hope moments was giving help to an elderly man who lived in a trailer park, walked into One Safe Place yesterday, and he'd been really living kind of in his own prison. He had a very abusive son who was just wreaking havoc on the residents and on this elderly man for years. And he was referred to One Safe Place by APS, our Adult Protective Services. And he walked in, and we actually went and picked him up. We gave him an Uber to pick him up. So transportation isn't a barrier at One Safe Place. We have 2 shuttle vans and then contracts with Uber and Lyft. And so this elderly gentleman was transported to the center, and then immediately the team amassed. He needed a restraining order, and he was able to get one with the on-site legal services. He connected with one of our partners, Interfaith Community Services, to help this other son with some alcohol abuse issues. He started visiting, some of our other partners yesterday, and he's going to be transported, back to and from home to keep continuing on as a returning member. And he left just with this smile on his face that my team reports, was worth $1 million. And that's just one form of elder abuse. Financial abuse is rampant. Scams, they call it the grandma scam. Somebody will call up an elderly and say, your granddaughter is, caught, and we need you to wire $7,500 to us very quickly, or else she's going to get hurt. And it's so sad, but our elder population, they grew up in a time when a handshake was a contract and you could trust people. And so, they're buying in. Some of these vulnerable population elders are buying in and losing their life savings to these scams. So we're always out there trying to spread the word. June is Elder Abuse Awareness Month nationally. And so we'll be wanting to get the word out in June, especially about awareness and red flags and warning signs to our elderly community.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I've been on an emotional ride here with you today, Tracy, because we have talked about so many groups that are just so near and dear to my heart. And to think of these people being abused is so painful. But I hope that our listeners have also come away from our talk today with hope, because people like you, Summer Stephan, One Safe Place, these things exist in our society as well. And so we are trying to care for the people who have experienced trauma and abuse. And I am so delighted to have learned so much more today in our talk, Tracy, about what's available out there, what you're doing. And I think it's very important that we do not forget to have you tell our listeners and viewers, where can people reach out? If they know somebody who's being abused or they are being abused, how do they reach out to you all?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Anybody can walk in our doors at any time. We are extended hours. So we are open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, Monday through Friday. So I'll just pause on that. That's extended for a government agency. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m, Monday through Friday, and then 8 to 12 on a Saturday. So we have some Saturday hours too, if that's more comfortable for you. But then you can also reach out. We have a phone number, a landline, 760-290-3690. And we also have an email that we watch for multiple times per day, and it's getope@onesafeplacenorth.org. You can also visit us on our website, which talks about our list of services and some of our upcoming events. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, so you can follow us at One Safe Place North if you're involved with social media. But I'd say the main thing is just come and see us. We have a care team that even if that day you come and see us, that's not your day, we're going to welcome you in the next day or whenever it is your day to come in.
And one last thing, what is the address of the center?
Sure. We are 1050 Los Vallecillos Boulevard in San Marcos. Our zip code's 92069, and we are in an Ashley Furniture Center. We're off the freeway, the 78 freeway. So please come and see us. Come and visit us.
Beautiful. Tracy, thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do, and for all the people who've helped and all the ones yet to come to One Safe Place.
Thank you so much
all for being with us. And please, if you know anybody who is a victim of trauma or abuse, tell them about One Safe Place. Tell them all what Tracy has just offered, and the phone numbers and the email address and all of these things that Tracy has just given us will be in the show notes. So if you didn't get a chance to write all that down, it will be in the show notes on changeitupradio.com. Thank you all for being here. Tracy, bless you. And we'll see you next week on Change It Up Radio. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining me on Change It Up Radio. I hope you found this episode informative and entertaining. If you want to hear past shows or you want to get information on being a guest or a sponsor of this show, go to changeitupradio.com. We all know that change is inevitable and it's necessary, but darn it, it's also tricky. My goal is to help you make the experience of change smoother and more productive. If you've benefited from this show, please subscribe to it, share it, and review it. That helps me to tune into what you really want to hear and what you really want to learn more about. Remember, you can find us on every major podcast platform and also on YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. We look forward to seeing you next week for Change It Up Radio.